This is Jamie Austin, and welcome to Real Estate of Mine, where we like to keep things real simple, talk about real investments, and give you some real answers. Welcome back. This is a great day. I have a fantastic guest on the show today. Her name is Bahar Geslin, and it sounds so fancy, and that's because she is, but she's a real estate trust attorney. But before we get to that, we really want to thank our sponsor, Pest Service Direct, for all your pest and termite needs. Call 1-888-909-4PSD or download the app on iTunes or Google Play. Thanks, Pest Service Direct. You're a fantastic sponsor. So let's welcome our first guest, Bahar. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Jamie.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited to be here.
Now, normally I would say, where do you work? But you actually own your own company.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I have my own law practice, and I focus on wills, trusts, probate, and trust administration, and that's generally under the umbrella called estate planning.
I love it because in real estate, like all the time I get questions about when do you use a trust? Why would you need a trust? What happens if you don't have a trust?
Right.
And I've actually gotten the pleasure to hear you speak at a seminar before. And I was like, this is a fantastic leeway to a guest on the show because this kind of can translate across the United States. Now with this UB and Go Network podcast, what's beautiful is we have over 1.3 million downloads.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. So we have a broad reach, and it's really not just centric to California, because this is advice that you would give in any state, really, even though you're licensed in California. But this would be something I would think advice would be given for anybody anywhere to get your property in a trust.
Well, I definitely want to let listeners know they should go to an attorney that's licensed
in their state.
Absolutely. Because the laws are different in every
Yep.
state. But I think that, to your point, absolutely, you need to make sure that your property is protected, whatever state you're in, and that you're leaving a legacy that can be passed on free of encumbrance and smoothly to the next generation or your church or whoever you want it being passed on to.
That's fantastic. And we'll get to that because there's definitely some good stories about being in California and what happens if your property is not in a trust. Now, the one thing that I hear the phrase revocable and irrevocable. So can you please describe and tell our listeners and our viewers what's the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust?
Okay. Well, generally speaking, a revocable trust or a revocable trust can be canceled, amended, or changed with relative ease at any point. And most of my clients and maybe most of the listeners and viewers today are going to be looking at creating a revocable trust. So one that they can amend if they're nominating somebody to be a successor trustee to manage their finances.
A marriage, a divorce, an addition, a deletion.
Yes, they can change it. And I think that one of the big fears is people have to make these decisions and they feel like they're set for life. I can never change it. And it's one of the things that stops people from creating an estate plan or a trust.
And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that when people hear estate, they might think really old or like, oh, I should wait to do this till the end of my time. Like wills, the same thing. It's like, oh, I'm healthy, I'm young, I'm whatever. Estate planning, that's for people down the line, maybe after my third or fourth property or something. Yeah, or after my kids are grown or whatever the situation is.
Right. They think this is something I should be doing at the end of my life, like you said, or if I'm really, really wealthy.
Right.
And most people, regardless of how much money they have in the bank, don't consider themselves really, really wealthy.
Right.
So, and there's sort of like this idea, like you hear the term trust fund child or something like that. And no, in California especially, anyone that has real estate or real property or gross assets of more than $150,000 should,
more than $150,000
gross. So not taking into account debt or liabilities.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. They should have a trust.
That's great news. I mean, that's really valuable news because I would think people would think, oh, I have to be a millionaire before I bother with any of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, not at all. And it's one of those things that if you don't know about it, you don't know to do it. And so I'm here to tell you that if you own property, which I imagine most of the people listening and watching today do, or they're thinking about getting property.
Or even if it's your first property.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till you buy that first property or second or third to do it. You can put it in place, and then when you acquire the property, you just take title in the name of the trust. So instead of taking title in the name of Jamie Austin, you take it in the name of the Jamie Austin Living Trust or whatever it's called.
And so then I could make changes down the line. Now, an irrevocable trust, I'm assuming, is the opposite. It's pretty status and you can't change it?
Right.
Okay. When would you use an irrevocable trust?
If you have a solid asset that you want no one to be able to touch, and that's going to, live for a very, very long time.
Okay, got it. So that makes sense. And I love this because I always get these questions like, when do you, because, owning property still, I don't care what state you're in. It's still, buying a piece of property is probably going to be the largest investment that any person makes in their entire lifetime. So you want to make sure that if you're making that investment, that you want to make sure you're doing everything right, which is why at Real Estate of Mine, I wanted to bring you some really helpful people with some really great ideas so that you're not stuck and you're one of those people that's like, oh God, I wish somebody had told me this 15 years ago, right?
Right. And a lot of times people figure it out and then they're too late, right? We're talking about, it's not light, but what happens when you die or you become incapacitated?
Right, or there's an accident.
Right, there's an accident. And then the person that you wanted to manage that on your behalf or the people that you wanted it to go to, you didn't have a chance to name them. So like you said, people's big investment in their life is often their home. And it's their legacy. And they work very hard to acquire that asset, that property, to keep it up, to make it look nice in a home, and they want to leave it to who they decide it should be left to, and make sure that instead of attorneys and the state getting a ton of money, that their family or friends or
or whoever they want to get. And I think that's so that brings me to my next question. Why would people want to put a property in a trust? What are the advantages and the disadvantages, if there are any disadvantages? So just like you were saying, you want to make sure, from everything I take back, it's like it gives me control as to what to do with any of my property or any real property that I have. I can designate who I want it to go to. If I wanted to give it to the gardener boy, I could do that. If I wanted to leave it to a sister, it doesn't have to be, and I think what I understood is it doesn't have to be necessarily your direct descendants.
Correct.
You can assign it to anybody. You could give it to a church. You could give it to the SPCA, but you have to set it into place to do that. Otherwise, what happens in the state of California, because this is where we're from, but we just want to give an example. Every state has their different laws, but what happens when you die? I mean, I know the answer to this question because it was on my real estate exam, my broker exam. But what happens if you die and you don't have a will or a trust?
So let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
Because a lot of people, everyone's heard of a will.
Right.
Right? And a lot of people don't know what this thing, a trust is.
Right.
So in California, it doesn't matter if you have a will or a nicely written note on a napkin. If you don't have a trust.
Right.
Your estate is going to go through a process called probate.
Can you say that one more time? If you have a will or a nicely written piece of paper from a lovely attorney, but you don't have a trust,
your estate will go through probate. And let me unpack that a little bit because those are a lot of big words.
I've got a lot of suitcases. I need you to unpack them.
Yeah.
So, start.
We have different court systems. So we have criminal court, family court, small claims court, traffic court. We all hate traffic court.
Right.
And then we have probate court. So that's where if you pass without a trust, okay, your estate will go, because we need a judge and attorneys to make sure that the creditors are getting their money and that the right people are getting their money. So that if you have children or nieces and nephews, whatever your family makeup is, that there's not some kid out there that lives, under a rock in a foreign country and that they don't come
that's
back.
Mine.
Yeah, and they don't come back in 10 years and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't get any notice.
Right.
Nobody told me.
Right.
Mom and dad died.
Right.
Where's my third?
Where's my half?
Yeah.
Where's my half? Right.
Yeah,
where's my third?
Half? Yeah. Where's my 10th?
Yeah.
And so the court just wants to make sure, things get published in a newspaper and that everyone has proper notice and creditors have an opportunity to show up and say, this person owed me money, and before the estate is distributed. The estate, I mean money. Think money. That's the simple way to think of it. Money and property. So, anyway, we want to avoid probate.
Right.
We want to avoid probate court because it's a very slow process.
Yes, it is.
And as I mentioned before, it's a costly process. You have I'm one of them. When you have attorneys involved, it costs money.
That's right.
It's not free. And so, again, you have this asset, your legacy. You want to make sure that as much of it as possible is going to your family, to your loved ones, instead of the court system and lawyers.
Let's cap right there, because I just want to interject one thing, because a lot of my clients, when they're looking for properties, one of the things they might see is a probate sale. First thing I ask is it court confirmation required, or is it not? That makes a big difference. The thing that you still need to be aware of is that if you are buying or potentially buying a probate property, it's more of a buyer beware sell. The people that have finally taken over the sale of the property, chances are they haven't lived there. They can't disclose things about the property. So whereas you think it's a great deal, sometimes it is, but they can't really give you a full picture as if somebody who actually lived in the house could. So therefore, if it's a court confirmation, which is required, it means the attorneys have decided on a price. You go down to the courthouse and you make a bid on the property, almost like an auction site. And then it just depends on, they have a starting bid, and then usually you have to bring increments of $1,000 in cashier checks to see wherever the price may go to. So it's still not necessarily a great deal, because it depends on where it goes to. If there's 20 people that show up and they're bargaining on the same property, the price could go up an extra $100,000. You just don't know. Now, if it is not court confirmation required, you have a potential to do more of sort of a standard sale. But again, it's still like a buyer beware. So the way to kind of circumvent all of that is to actually get a trust in place, so you don't leave it to the state or attorneys to handle your affairs, because then even the process of buying a probate is usually a longer process. So if you're looking to turn something around in 30 days, probably not going to happen. So now we continue.
Right. So, and you made a great point about the sellers not having knowledge of, and a history of the property, because It's something that they may have just inherited, without knowing. And that's the other advantage to having a trust. Going back to your original question, is it's a private process, right? It's between the trustee and the beneficiaries.
Right.
And it's not anything that's happening in court is happening
in
front of the public.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone can know your business.
That's right.
And how much money is on the table. And a lot of times, unfortunately, you have people coming out of the woodwork.
Yep.
With their hand out.
That's right. Saying, oh, no, you can't sell that outright. There's me. And
right.
So then it was got to stop the process. Then the attorneys have to follow through with that potential claim to see if there could ever be anything that comes back to them. Again, adds time. And just, you're not really dealing with the best scenario necessarily.
Exactly. So in California, in order to avoid probate, you need a trust. Okay.
Right.
So a will is great, but in California,
trust is even better.
Trust is even better if you have property, a house or land, or if you have a gross value of more than $150,000. So
that's great. All right, so I think we just kind of jumped ahead because we were flowing. So that was my next question. Now explain. We did explain the probate and how a trust actually protects you, and what are actually the tax benefits of having a trust.
People want to do estate planning at two stages, in the twilight years or when they have young kids, because you want to make sure that they're protected and that you're doing the responsible thing for them.
Absolutely.
Naming guardians and a successor trustee, that's somebody who's going to manage the assets on their behalf.
Right.
Should
both the parents go and the kids are left, but they're too young to really manage the assets.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, everything's going to be held, and every time a decision needs to be made, people need to go to court. So when you create a trust, you're naming a successor trustee who's going to manage those best benefits on behalf of your beneficiaries, whether they're older children or loved ones or younger minors. And so the reason so when we were talking about tax benefits, the thing that I really want to point out that's important is a lot of times people with older children, they'll go, so people come into me and they're doing their estate plan, maybe they have young kids, and then they go, and my parents have, they have property and they need to have a trust.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll do their trust too. Other times people come in and they say, you know what? My mom, she has this house. That's all she has. And she just added me to title.
Wow.
And they think, they can bypass me and they can bypass the system and they've got it all figured out.
Right.
So you were asking about tax benefits.
Right.
And the reason why you don't want to do that, we call it estate planning by deed, it's not a good idea, is because when maybe your mom bought that property 30 years ago.
Right.
Okay. And it had a tax basis of, you're in California.
$500.
Right. Yeah. Depending on where
now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say $300,000. Okay. You have a tax basis. And now today that property's worth 1.5 million.
Yep.
Okay. The minute she added you to title, as maybe joint tenants with the right of survivorship, you now own half that property.
Mm-hmm.
So your tax basis is from when you acquired that property, when you were on title.
Which is later.
When it's worth 1 million, 1.5 million, and it's not 300,000. So the advantage to instead your mom creating an estate plan, putting the property in a trust, is that when you inherit that property, you will maintain the $300,000 tax basis in this example instead of the fair market value today.
That's a huge difference.
Right.
It's a huge difference.
Right. So there's certainly other tax benefits, especially if you're in a state like California where we have community property and married people can have
absolutely
exemptions.
A 250, 500,000 total. Right, that they could take out. But I think that's a really big point. So they would think, if I just put my child on title, then things will be hunky-dory. And then when I die, the property will be made sure to go to them.
Exactly.
But you're saying that if they actually get a trust in place and they don't put them on title yet, that when they actually do pass, but they've named them in the trust as a successor, then they get the tax basis of when mom bought it in 1971 as opposed to when they added them in 2012, which of course would have been much more expensive.
Right.
So that's a very huge distinction, because I think a lot of people might not know that. Like, I think a lot of people think I'm doing the right thing by adding them on title, when in fact the really poignant way to go is to get a trust instead and really line up past that, which is you have to know a little bit about what benefits they would be getting tax-wise out of that to protect them and protect the clients and even the successors.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's really a great point. I love that.
Yeah. And certainly, as I said, there are many, many other tax benefits, but I think that's the one I want to point out to listeners today, because it's the little known, you don't think about it and you think, oh, I'm smart. I'm just going to get on title. Yeah. And certainly they will get the property. Absolutely. But the cost that you saved in going to sit down with an attorney and going through this process
won't even cover the property taxes.
No.
Not even close. That's great. Normally throughout the show, sometimes when we hit a point, and I really like to just say it's a real estate of mind, the real estate of mind tip of the day is going to be, don't put your kid on title, do a trust, and then successor. We have a caller. Let's see who's calling. We'll take a caller and then we'll see. Hi, sure. This is Jamie from Real Estate of Mind. Who do I have online with me?
Hey, Jamie. My name's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Excellent. So I have Bahar on here, who's a fabulous trust attorney. Do you have a question for me or for her?
Yeah. So I'm wondering, when does it make sense to put a property in a trust, and what are those benefits?
That's a great question. We kind of covered a little bit, but Bahar was saying I'll let her answer it.
Hi, Sarah. That's a great question. So when you create your estate plan or your trust with your attorney, you will then talk about what property you have. So if you have owned property at that time, if I'm your attorney, I will draw up a deed transferring title from your name as an individual, or if you're married, however title is held, into the name of the trust. And if you acquire a property after the trust is created, then you just go call up your attorney and say, oh, I got a new property. Or you can ask the title company, you say, I have a trust, I want to make sure to take title in the name of the trust, and you can give them your trust document, and they are very well versed in doing that. That's not a problem at all.
So it's like the second you buy a property, Sarah, so like if your husband's name is Dan, we'll just call him Dan, but Sarah and Dan, a revocable trust, that would be the name of the trust, and then suddenly you're not an individual, it's in the name of the trust. And then if you change properties, then you can always go back to the attorney or to the title company and add the new property on there. But I think the protection that she's really trying to point out is that then you have the power, like if you have children, you can add them on there. If you have parents that you think might, who knows, might want to provide living conditions for them, you can put all of that in a trust and it's all spelled out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess a follow-up would be, what's the difference of just putting this property in a will?
Very good question. We were just kind of brazing over that topic. And in the state of California, they said wills are nice. They look pretty on paper. You can even have one on a napkin if you like, but that is not as powerful as having a trust.
Right. Because if you have property in California and you just have a will, it will still go through probate. So if you don't have the trust,
and that's what you want to avoid at all costs, is the probate.
Right.
Because it's not handled by your personal people, it's handled by state attorneys. And it could be anybody. So chances are your assets are not going to be handled in the way that probably you would want.
Right. Yeah. The probate court, it's, our court systems are bogged down. It's a costly process. It's a long process. So if you have a will, that's a great start, but you really want to go and talk to an attorney about drafting a trust and bringing your property, taking title to all of your property, not just your real property. But
and Bahar, you also do wills in addition to that, right?
Absolutely.
So an estate planning would probably encompass wills, trusts, so anything like that you could get a whole encompassing idea about what you want to do with your life, your assets, whether it be real property, personal property, anything like that. She can handle it from top to bottom.
Great question. Yeah. So an estate plan, a complete estate plan, has 4 major parts, and there are a ton of other ancillary documents that I won't get into. But basically, we create a trust, a will for each respective person if it's a couple, powers of attorney for finance, and an advanced healthcare directive, and in California, HIPAA release as well. All of those documents together are what we call an estate plan.
That's pretty powerful. Did that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, that's actually great. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for calling, and have a great Friday.
You too.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. That was really good. So an estate planning is really the full kit and caboodle.
Right. It covers all the bases, everything that might come up potentially if you pass. And, I'm so glad that she asked that question because the trust is very important, especially, we're here talking about real estate. But, there's also a document that I mentioned called the power of attorney for finance. Yep. And that really, the trust it's living. It exists the minute it's signed. We can start taking title to our assets. But, what happens if you're incapacitated, right?
Good. Yep.
Temporarily.
Even at that could be something. I think we even have another caller. 2 more callers, actually. So let's take another caller.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jamie Austin with Real Estate of Mind. Who do I have here?
Hey, Jamie, this is Beauregard. How are you?
Hi, Beauregard. Welcome to the show. What can we answer for you today with our fabulous trust attorney?
Hi there.
Awesome. Hey there. I've been following the show since the very beginning. I'm a huge fan, so I'm really excited to be on today.
Yay.
I was wondering a little bit more on the trust and wills. I was wondering, can they ever be in conflict? And if so, how do you resolve that?
Good question.
Great question. So, yes, they can be in conflict. And then usually one document in the trust that I draft state that one would be controlling over the other. So
you clarify it.
Yeah, you clarify it. You say, if ever a document, not just a will, but if any document exists that's in conflict, this document's going to control.
Supersede it.
Yeah, supersede it. And then other than that, you look to what the kind of conflict is and when that document was drafted.
Created.
Yeah.
Is it possible that you as the attorney inherit documents?
Absolutely.
So then that may be the conflict if you didn't draft the estate plan from beginning to end? Is that where maybe a conflict might come into play?
Yes, or somebody they created all their documents with me, and then they had a change of heart and didn't want to spend the money or
whatever
out of convenience, went to someone else, and they created some other document or typed something up saying, I actually want everything to go to my caretaker. That's something that comes up all the time.
Oh, I bet.
And they don't want their family to know about it because they know it'll, cause a lot of conflict. And And so now you have two documents that say very different things.
Yeah.
And that's why, we have certain standards that we look at. We look at the mental capacity of the person when the documents
were created.
Were created. Was there any duress or fraud involved? And it's another reason why the probate system exists, to make sure that, none of that was taking place when the documents were drafted.
Fantastic. Beauregard, does that answer your question?
Awesome. It sure does. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for calling in today. All right. Take care.
Absolutely.
Do we still have that other caller? They were patiently waiting. Thank you, other caller. Jamie Austin with Real Estate in Mind. Who do we have?
Hello, are you there?
I am. Are you there?
Yeah. Hey, great. Thanks for taking my call. I have a question. So
Sure.
My husband and I are we're starting to look at houses now.
Uh-huh.
Both of our second marriages, we both have kids.
Okay.
Would a trust be the right thing for us? Because what we're kind of thinking is what we want to avoid is like any kind of fighting down the line between, when the kids, when it's their turn and the assets are, ready to be sort of split up and distributed.
That is such a prime question. And I
Absolutely.
think, yes. It's like run, don't walk, get a trust.
Right.
And the reason being is for that very thing she was saying. When you set up a trust, you take out the conflict right at the beginning. And it is your directive. And if you do a revocable one, which means like, let's say down the line, there's grandkids that are now involved. And you may want to pass on property to grandchildren that weren't there when you first developed this, this trust with your properties. But I think absolutely, especially if you're a merged family and you have kids from different marriages, things may not be divided equally among them. It depends on maybe what assets you brought to the marriage originally. So that could affect how the trust is written. Am I correct, Bahar?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is such a great question. Blended families especially should, like Jamie said, run, don't walk. Yeah, run, don't walk. In California being a community, I don't know what state you're in, but if you're in a community property state, especially.
Yeah, I'm in California.
You're in California.
Yes.
Okay, great. So,
more.
Let's say life gets busy and you guys don't create an estate plan. In California, the spouse gets everything. So, if one of you passes and then life gets busy again, you don't create an estate plan, the second to pass's children are going to get the bulk of what's there, and that may not be what you want. Right. So I don't know if your kids are little, you especially want to do it, but even if they're older, it's something that you want to consider. And like I said before, you don't have to wait until you acquire that property. And it's actually great, as you're looking around for properties, it's, sometimes that can take time, sometimes it goes quickly, but you can have the trust in place so that when you find that right property, it goes
smoothly
straight into the trust.
Well, that's great to know. So I can do that ahead of time.
Yep,
absolutely.
You certainly can.
Yeah, you don't need to wait at all until you have the property.
Because it's really not about the property. It's really about the people, the linear line that you want, where the asset's going, and that could be cash assets, property assets, stocks, bonds. It could be furniture. It could be anything. But the point is if you take the time to tell who is getting what, then the properties may change over the years, and then you just let the estate, you let the trust attorney know that we've made a change in property, but still the lineage of where we wanted the proceeds to go or whatever, it is all lined up.
Right, because we estate plan for tomorrow. What happens if something happens to us tomorrow? So we don't know. Today we didn't have a house. Today we didn't have this. We had all the money sitting in savings for the down payment. So you want to make sure that whatever your asset basis looks like, that you, like Jamie said, you've decided who's getting it and how.
And then you just have a happy Thanksgiving instead of a very stressful one.
Definitely sleep better at night.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys. No, that's really helpful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate you taking the time. All right.
Thank you.
Take care. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So those are some really good questions. And I think another really good thing you pointed out is really in the totality to have an estate plan where you have not only the trust, but you have the will, which could change, and then you have the powers of attorney for people, and then the financial aspect, the healthcare directive is really, really powerful information. So what do you think I'm throwing it out there. What do you think is a really big rookie mistake that most people make?
Well, I think the caller touched on one of them is, I don't have the house yet. I don't have the asset yet. So I'm just going to wait till I have it. The truth is once you get that house, you're going to start fixing it up. You're going to decorate it. And life just, I think the rookie mistake is thinking that there's a reason not to do it and to keep putting it off, because the next thing you know, like I said, we don't know. We're not promised tomorrow.
That's right.
Right.
And as much as we don't even want to think badly about going down that line, but I think it's practical in a way. And I think if you can wrap your head around, we don't know tomorrow, we're never promised tomorrow. I mean, I think having those things in place is really powerful.
Right. It's irresponsible, really, to the loved ones that you're leaving behind, to not take care of this. This is, to steal the millennial term, this is adulting 101,
Adulting 101.
Adulting 101 on real estate.
Real Estate of Mind by Bahar. Adulting 101. Get your trust attorney involved and get one set up. Get a directive set up for a trust. And even if you don't have the property, you can still set it up so that then they can just come and make an amendment when they've got the house or
it's not even an amendment. It's just when you take title, you tell the title. They ask you, when usually
they can actually add that without even having to call you, or they'll just give you the information and you'll have it.
Right. One of the documents that my office prepares, is something called a certificate of trust, and I mean it tells you exactly how you're supposed to take title.
Perfect.
And so you don't even really need to call. You just know. It's something I will have drilled into your head.
I love it.
The one thing you need to remember, I always tell people, if you're not sure, just call, but is that you need to take title to your assets in the name of the trust. That's the most important thing.
So take title in the name of the trust.
Right.
Yep. So it kind of takes the individual off the table, puts the trust in the table so that it's blanketed and there's an umbrella under that will protect them.
Right. And the other rookie mistake, I think, is when people are unsure, I don't know who to name. I don't know. I don't have any trusted person.
I don't know which one of my kids I'm going to like more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's
or even just the power of attorney, for instance.
Right.
Because the power of attorney may not be a relative.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
None of these people have to be relatives.
Right.
I always say, I don't know who your key players are. Some people love their family and they only trust their family. Some people love their family, but they are not the people they want to name.
Right.
In these roles.
They aren't the people they want to handle their legal affairs.
Right. Could be a cousin, a best friend, a neighbor. And these are conversations you're going to have with those people and say, a lot of times people are honored to be a part of it. And if you have young children, people, we ask that you name a guardian. That's very important.
Very important.
Because if you don't do it, if you don't do any of these things,
does the state and the court do?
Yeah. The court's going to decide for you. And
that's just heartbreaking to even think about that.
Yeah. And you want to make sure that your children are being raised and that the assets are being managed by people that you trust, that their values are in line with yours. And
absolutely.
That they're going to do the right thing. And so I think that's one of the things people are confused, or they think, a lot of people say, okay, what do I need to decide before I come in to see you? And go, you don't need to decide anything. I'm going to walk you through this. Let a professional do it. Or they want to do it on their own. They, Legal Zoom or...
Oh, my God. Legal Zoom, not?
Yeah.
I mean, some things, but not something as important as your family assets, no.
Right. I liken it to you need some kind of surgery and you're going to watch a YouTube video on how to do it. You're going to try and do it yourself.
I'm going to take out my own gallbladder, fill myself up, and I'll be fine.
Yeah. I can do stitches.
You're right. No problem.
Yeah. I know how to stitch. No, you wouldn't do that. And this is not, you want a professional to sit down with you and ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
And help you make those really, really important decisions. And the thing is once you've done it, it's done. You don't have to, it's something you can revisit if you want to, but you certainly don't have to. And every one of my clients tells me, I'm sleeping so much better now that I know that this is off my plate.
Right. And that's a really big component because I would think it's absolute, without a doubt, peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Great. And can you update a trust? This was another question that some of the listeners I had when I knew I was going to be doing the show. Can you update a trust that was drawn up by someone years ago?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about revocable and irrevocable,
Yes.
right? And so in a revocable trust, you can update it, amend it, cancel it, change it at any time. And a restatement, and that's the legal term of art, is basically saying the document that was written, this is the document that replaces it. So you can do a whole restatement that's just switching out the whole thing, or you can do a simple amendment. You know, the successor trustee that you originally named to manage your assets, you know, after you, took a job in Singapore, or is no longer in good health, or I'm not friends with them anymore. You know, whatever. It could be any of the above. And so you can just do a simple amendment, you know, a couple page thing, and update that portion of it.
Got it.
But laws are always changing, and so if you have a trust that you've done 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you definitely want to sit down with an attorney and say,
just check to make sure it's still applicable.
Right.
Everything is still copacetic in the trust.
Yeah, and one of the questions I get that's related to that a lot is, you know, when do I update this? So I'm sitting down with you today,
right,
but when should I come back in? And I think usually a major life event like a divorce
or a marriage or children or perhaps a loss of a loved one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then certainly as your kids get older, this, you know, if you have young kids and you're doing your estate plan, which you're all going to do now that you've listened to this.
We have listened to our adulting lesson today.
Exactly. And then, you know, we estate plan for tomorrow. So you've got little kids and you're planning for, you know, what happens if I'm not around and, you know, their parents aren't there anymore. And then now they're looking at medical school, culinary school, they're starting the new big tech company. It's a different kind of planning. So that's when you're going to sit down again with an attorney and say, okay, I know that they're set and I'm not, you know.
They're taken care of.
Yeah.
We got this.
Right. Choosing someone who's going to take them to piano and that stuff. But
I love this. So if someone were in the need of a trust attorney, how do you decide whether or not the case is a valid one to take on? Is it just pretty much anybody that doesn't have anything set up property-wise trust in a trust?
Yeah, basically anyone, like I said before, that has children or has property, real property, a house, land.
And anything over assets over $150,000. I heard that very clearly.
Yes.
And there's some people that have a combination of that. It's
Absolutely.
Your property's valued at this. You might have savings, stocks and bonds, which might even, you know, even if your property is valued at $70,000, which there are some places, you know, in other states that's the value of the property, but then they have savings that might equal that. So just any time that's the case, it's good to have a trust.
Right. And states where property values are lower, you want to check with, you know, what the local rules are, because that threshold in California, it's $150,000.
But it could be $30,000.
It could be much
or
lower in a different
$20,000.
state.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Any advice you would give our listeners and viewers? You've been fantastic and forthcoming with information, which I love. Any last little bit of tidbit that you would say to somebody, and then we'll let our listeners and viewers know how to get in touch with you personally.
Yes.
But other than that, one little last bit of tidbit.
Don't be scared of the process. You know, it's
Great advice.
It's not fun to think about dying,
Right.
and what might happen and leaving your loved ones behind. But it doesn't have to be a scary process. And you asked earlier about, you know, what kind of cases I take on. But I think it's also important to choose an attorney that you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely.
If you're scared to go through the process and you are working with an attorney, maybe you need to choose a different one.
Absolutely.
Or find one. Ask your friends, you know, call me.
Yeah.
But ask your friends, ask your loved ones, you know, talk to people, go to seminars like, you know, you did, and find the right person that's going to walk you through this process. And
basically circling back around to, you know, being a broker, I surround myself with a team of fantastic referrals. And this was a referral, like Bahar is one of the referrals from somebody that I work with very closely. And it's really wonderful to have a new person that I could refer, because I think it's becoming even more and more important in the information age where you can get a lot of information, you know, at your fingertips. I think the one thing that's starting to kind of slip is like an overall picture. There's so much information coming at you that I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that you trust, that will help you see the bigger picture and kind of actually focus and hunker down on the main components that are the most important. I can help you buy your place. She can help you put it in how it should be protected. Correct. And then you have like a mortgage person that you trust that will get you through the process of getting you the loan and handling your finances. And then throughout that process after that, you'd want to say, if you own anything and the assets are valued at over $150,000 in California, I would recommend now immediately upon closing, speak to a trust attorney. Important that you get all that stuff lined up, and then sleep better at night. Like I even had, I had this wonderful group of ladies called the Mana Financial Ladies, and they were fantastic because so many people don't like to talk about money. They don't like to talk about dying. They don't like to talk about the not so pretty parts of life. But I think if you have a good financial planner, you have a fantastic real estate agent, and you have a fantastic, trust attorney, all of those components put together just mean you sleep easier.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Just means you sleep easier.
Yeah. And, you work hard with your agent to find that perfect home and to find that perfect house that you're going to make a home. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then now you really want to protect it.
Absolutely.
And make sure that it works for you and your family forever, and that it doesn't just get lost in the process. And like we talked about, we don't just deal with the property, but a lot of aspects of making sure that your family is protected. I really think of it as a protection plan. We call it an estate plan, but it's really a protection plan for your whole life. It
feels more protection than just estate. So I love that. Thank you for joining us today. So Bahar, if people wanted to get in touch with you and they wanted to check out your services and hire you to do their estate planning or put their properties in trust, how would they go about do that?
So you can contact me via email. My email is bgeslin, so I'll spell that out, bgeslin at gelinlaw.com. So that's bgeslin at geslinlaw.com.
I love it. So that's fantastic. You got a really great resource here. And I love being able to bring this kind of information to my listeners and to my viewers. It's really important. Again, Real Estate of Mind, this show is really all for you guys. So I like to try to come and listen to what's important to you so that I can try to find the right people to bring to you to give you the good information. Because again, Real Estate of Mind, we like to keep things real simple. And we like to talk about real investments and give you real answers. And Bahar did that today. So thank you so much, listeners, for coming. Come back next week and see what else we have going on for you. This is Jamie Austin with Real Estate of Mind.